With tensions high on the ground between Russia and the U.S. and NATO, there's some concern that the conflict could one day spill over into space. Enter a secretive base in Germany where an allied space force is keeping a close eye on everything happening up above us and how one move up there, one wrong move, could have dramatic implications down here. Our cameras were the first ever allowed inside. Ines De La Cuetara reports.
At the heart of Ramstein Air Force Base in Germany, a mysterious new division of military personnel quietly working to keep America and its allies safe from hostile attacks in space.
That's a geosynchronous orbit, so those are your communication satellites, most of them.
So these are all the different NATO nations.
NATO's new space center, created just 2 years ago as space becomes increasingly militarized. In an exclusive look, our cameras, the first ever allowed inside, heading below ground to this highly classified situation center. Here, space experts from 12 NATO nations, wow, this is super cool, including members of the Canadian Space Agency, Spanish fighter pilots, and U.S. Space Force Guardians, all working together. Their mission, keeping an eye on the more than 8,000 satellites orbiting the Earth and sharing their findings across the alliance.
There is a lot of nations that are building systems for space, and if we're not monitoring that, then we would lose the advantage of what things are happening in space and those indications and warnings, maybe, of what's to come. Yeah.
Russia's war in Ukraine making their task more important than ever, with Ukraine now relying on satellites for its communications. The help of Elon Musk's Starlink, while high-resolution satellite images have shown everything from troop movements to the bodies lining the streets of Russian-held areas. Satellite surveillance even helping to sink the flagship of Russia's Black Sea Fleet in April.
Without those space-based capabilities to assist, I think you would not see the successes and really the heroic actions and defense that you've seen from Ukraine and its people.
But it's not just modern warfare. Nearly every aspect of our daily lives now involves satellite technology. From financial systems, computer data, mobile phone networks, power grids, and air defense.
If we lose position, navigation, and timing, so GPS or Galileo, if those systems were to go away, well then, you can't track forces, you can't track DHL.
The Earth's orbit, now a region deemed congested, contested, and competitive. And as our dependence on satellites only increases, so too do the threats to allied assets in space, where a worst-case scenario could put us on the brink of nuclear war. Because when we talk about the possibility of conflict in space, we're not talking about this. Instead, some of the concerns have to do with space-based technology capable of targeting our satellites. Things like anti-satellite weapons, signal jamming, and lasers.
Russia and China, our primary strategic competitors, are taking steps to undercut the United States and our allies in the space domain.
The more aggressive technologies that we see the likes of Russia and China developing, because they recognize how important space is to us.
In November of last year, Russia carried out an anti-satellite test, blowing up one of its own. Some of that debris coming dangerously close to the International Space Station, forcing astronauts to shelter in place and adjust their trajectory.
Anti-satellite launches like Russia did just compromise space for everybody.
China also conducted a similar test in 2007 and continues to be a top concern to NATO's space officers.
We recently were monitoring a piece of a Chinese vehicle that was coming back, and it was not a controlled re-entry, and so there was a lot of concern.
Satellites even playing a key role in nuclear defense early warning systems.
Space-based capability is a really vital part of how we understand nuclear capability, not just in Russia, but more globally.
The fear being that a threat or perceived threat to nuclear early warning satellites could be the match that ignites Armageddon.
Do NATO allies have offensive capabilities in space?
So what I can't do is talk specifics on that side, but what I can reiterate is the importance of making sure that our access to space is what we need it to be.
With space becoming increasingly vital to both military and civilian operations, NATO declaring space a fifth operational domain and outlining its space policy.
So this right here is a visualization of a specific set of satellites. And part of the work done here at the NATO Space Center is figuring out where these satellites are going to be at a specific point in time.
Bottom line, I think, from a NATO Space Center, we're here to protect and defend.
NATO recognizing attacks to, from, or within space could lead to the invocation of Article 5, which would compel the U.S. and its allies to a military response. And with the war in Ukraine entering its 9th month, Russia repeatedly threatening to fire the first shots. Just last month, threatening to shoot down key U.S. satellites Ukrainian forces have been relying on, even declaring commercial satellites legitimate wartime targets.
Would an attack on a commercial satellite trigger a NATO response?
So I can't be drawn there. It's a really valid question, but it comes back to one would look at case-by-case basis. What I would say is that any action like that is just likely to cause problems for anybody who operates in space.
With the war raging on and with tensions around the world now sky high, the mission here more critical than ever.
Do you think space conflict in the future is inevitable?
I think, actually, because space is such an important domain, we are going to have to aim off for that potential. And that requires a raft of capability.
Really insightful stuff there. Our thanks to Ines for that.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.